Today, I want to take a moment and introduce using Bootstrap to develop responsive web pages. Bootstrap is a powerful toolkit that uses CSS and can be used for a multitude of things, but my focus today is how we can create responsive grid layouts on a web page. I believe that using Bootstrap is a great way to create landing pages that have a unique structure. And I think one page in specific that stands out that's great for Bootstrap is the staff page. So before we dive in, we should make a plan. So I think today's goal is going to be to create a landing page for our staff that has 3 columns with staff members listed with their photo, their name, and their title. I might even want to include a section above that has a highlight for a CEO or a principal, and that would be a 2 column layout with a smaller image and then their name and title as well. So looking at our VS Code document here, we have a few things listed. In our head, we have Bootstrap implemented. Within our body, we have an H1 tag for our staff. And then below this on line 11 here is where we're going to implement our Bootstrap. But before we do that, we need to know a few things. And so I want to kind of cover a few areas of Bootstrap that are just introductory. First, please know that Bootstrap is using CSS. They've got hundreds of classes, and we can define some of those classes that we'll use today. So today, we're going to use a class of container, we're going to use a class of row, and we're going to use a class of columns. And so these are going to be what we use to define our grid. It helps the alignment of the page. It even develops some padding of the content of that page. So additionally, we're going to look at some attributes that the column should have. And the columns attributes should include the viewport breakpoints and how wide the columns will be. And so the viewport breakpoints are going to be things like extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and I believe even 2 extra large viewports. And so these different breakpoints are predefined by Bootstrap. And basically think about it as small to medium phones, tablets, monitors, and even televisions. So what we'll use today are primarily the smaller side. We'll use extra small and probably the small viewport breakpoint. The next thing to look at will be how wide. And the way that Bootstrap defines width is through the number 12. So 12 is that magic number for a full width length of a page. And so if we were to make 2 columns, that would be 12 divided by 2, and that would give us 6 and 6. If we were to divide into 3 columns, which is one of our goals today, it would be columns of 4, 4, and 4 to give us 12. So I hope that makes sense because we'll see that in the code, and I want to say that it's a pretty top priority in getting the right structure for a page, especially if you're going to have multiple columns. If you're going to have multiple columns and some that are in differing areas, we might use rows to break that up. So we'll see that as well today. So let's go ahead and dive in and build this page. So to start, we're going to have some divs. We're going to start with a div with a class of container. We're going to go and close that. And Bootstrap is nice because it's nestable. So when it closes this div, we'll be able to go inside and create a new div. And this next class is going to be row. So we're defining our row. And then inside of our row, we're going to have a div with a class of column. So the starting class for the columns is actually COL. And so what we can do next is do COL dash. We need to define our viewport. And so that'll be extra small. And on extra small devices, I want this to be a responsive. So I want this to be full width. So I'm going to go ahead and do 12 because like I said earlier, 12 is full width for Bootstrap. Next, we might want to define our next size up. So let's go COL dash SM dash 4. So like I mentioned earlier, the COL dash SM4, we're going to need 4 and 4 and 4 to create a full width page of 12. So let's see that in action. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of line 13 here. There and there. So now I have 4, 8, 12 defined. So looking at what to add inside of these containers, we said we wanted to define an image, a title, and a position. And so to do that, we're going to add an image tag. We're going to add an H2, which will be for our name. And then we're going to add an H3, which will be for our title. So I'm going to go ahead and define an image. We're going to have a source of images, headshot.png, and that's because that's what I've defined up here in my bin. We're going to go ahead and give this a style with a width of 100%. And then I'm going to add an alt text here to be headshot. All right, so next is our title, our name, Anthony S. And then our title, which I will just use Bootstrap Leader today. So there we go. Now we have that information plugged in. It'll render over here in our preview. And so I'm going to copy this information. And we're going to copy and paste it in here to show off our columns. And so there we go. I have some extra information here. I'm going to get rid of these extra closing carets. Okay, so now we have a row of 3. And inside of that we have our image, our name, and our position. And this isn't the prettiest because it's just very bare bones, but just know that with Bootstrap you can also customize, you can use additional classes. They have 100 or more classes that are defining how things might look or how things are shaped out and how much padding exists. So just know that there's more to this than what we're seeing today. This is just an introduction to how it lays out in formats for the grid system. All right, so let's look next at maybe adding a second row with a different format of columns. So I want to make a 2-column row now, and maybe this is where we highlight our principal or our CEO, whomever it might need to be. So on line 11, I'm going to go ahead and create a new line, and I'm going to do another div of class equals row. Close that off, and inside of here, you'll see that reformatted back because now we're starting a new row. I want to add a 2-set column for Bootstrap. So I will do another div with a class of column. So COL dash, and like I said, make it mobile responsive, COL dash XS dash 12. But additionally, I'll do COL SM dash 6. Close this off, and to make this a little easier on our time, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it. So there's our 2 columns. Now, like I said earlier, it has to equal 12. If I were to make this column of 3 and 6, that would give us 9. And the issue with doing that is that if we needed to add more information later, it might interfere with the format of the page. So because there's still 3 digits remaining, if we were to do another COL SM of 3, then it might interfere with the format and it might put 3 items in a row rather than the 2 that we desire. So what I'm going to go ahead and do to kind of clean this up is make 6 actually be 9, because I am anticipating that 6 and 6 is going to be a little bit too big for the image itself at 100% width. Obviously we could define that with styles, but today I want to make it a width of 100% just to make this straightforward. So instead of breaking it all into one space like we did prior, I'm actually going to do in this first column just the photo. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. You'll see it's a little smaller, and that's because the column size is smaller with this being a 100% width image. This is going to be a little bit smaller of an image, and that's okay unless that's what we desire to be bigger. Then we can play with it, whether it's width of the image itself or even the width of the column. But the reason I'm doing the column in this shape is I want a little bit more space for our text information. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to paste it inside of this container. So there it is. If I wanted to make this look prettier, I could obviously go to my row here and I could add a predefined style or a class that we've made. So I'm just going to do style of margin dash bottom and do about 30 pixels. That'll give us some more space right here to separate out this principal space or even the highlighted member of the staff. Now something to add here is by default you see that this has space. These aren't touching. And the reason that is in most cases, Bootstrap by default has a gutter size of 15 pixels per row or per column item. So that's defined here. So that gives you about 30 pixels of space between each one. And so if you're ever having any issues with the formatting of a page, just know it's likely due to that 15 pixel gutter on the left and the right of each column. So this is a very straightforward page. There's not a lot here. And like I said earlier, we've defined things to equal 12, both in the SM-3 and the SM-9. But say we have a lot more staff members join that we want to put in this 3-column section. Instead of going in and creating a new row here, we can actually add them to the existing row just as long as everything is equivalent to 12. And so even if we had one extra member, so say we had 10 members that we wanted to highlight in this row that might typically show 9, if we do 3, it should render properly. So let's go ahead and see that example play out. We've already got 3 here. I'm going to go ahead and make a second row of 3. So I'm just going to copy this information, paste it. So there it is. Inside of this row, we have 6, and it's 12 and 12. So that's why we have 2 columns here, or 2 rows here with 3 informational columns. If I were to add another set, that would be 9. And now we're starting to get a little bit of a scroll. But let's just go ahead and see what happens when we add a 10th in. So I'm going to copy 1, and there it is. So there it is. It's going to align perfectly within that first column. And if this were to be on a mobile device, we can kind of see that viewport start changing as we shrink the size of this viewport. So there you have it. Here's every member of our team in a mobile responsive 12-column extra small Bootstrap. Obviously, like I said earlier, there's more styles that we can do. There's more formatting and styling that you'd probably want to do with a live page to make it look pretty. But in terms of bootstrapping, this is the format that you would generally follow for the grid system. I hope this helps. This is an introduction to Bootstrap, and if you want to learn more about it, you can obviously go to their website, getbootstrap.com, and see all the documentation that they have there. So I hope this helps. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. Let's see what else we can create.